everybody. Thank you for everybody's patience and input yesterday. These are trying times. We have an abbreviated agenda that we'll be following today. There will be no public hearings, no public comment. We do have a presentation from JLL today. That will be our work session, and then we will proceed to our regular business meeting where we will, this is an abbreviated docket, people, so let's focus on getting our work done today and making sure everybody's safe. So I know this table setup probably doesn't look great for the cameras, but we'll just make it work. Jim, you're starting.
Mayor, members of council, good afternoon. Thank you for being here today. And just one item on the work session. It was back in October that City Council authorized the funding of a feasibility study for the soccer and entertainment stadium at the proposed Downtown South development project. This is a jointly funded feasibility study with Wake County. The city of Raleigh agreed to take the lead. We hired JLL to conduct the feasibility study. JLL has tremendous experience in reviewing arenas and stadiums throughout the country, but they also know Raleigh and Wake County. They completed in the past year and a half the CVB Destination Strategic Plan. This study only was focusing on the soccer and entertainment stadium, was not on the entire Downtown South project. Specifically, the scope of the study, including assessing market demand for the venue, facility programming, and organizational scenarios for ownership, operations, and financing. With us today is Dan Fenton. Dan is the Executive Vice President of JLL, who has led this study and is going to walk you through the presentation. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Jim. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate the opportunity to do this. Can you hear me okay? Appreciate, well, you can't see me. Appreciate the opportunity to do this. We're going to walk through this. I think it's important to say that even though this is a fairly quick review, we're happy to, in the future, even as council members think about this and have further questions, of course, we're happy to take those also. But we'll start to work through this with you. This is a little bit of what we're going to try to go over, and Jim has already talked a little bit about sort of the broader scope, but we're going to talk about the market, how we came up with thoughts around programming, the notion of the impact on the community from a venue like this, and talk a little bit about organizational scenarios and models that might be contemplated when you think about a project like this. First slide here really just indicates the fact that we have talked to a lot of different experts. We've spent time thinking about industry trends as part of this and looking at a lot of, if you will, both data points and input. And if you look at the upper right-hand corner, that's probably one of the first outcomes of this, and that is part of the discussions that we had with multiple types of users brought us to this notion of a roughly 10,000 seat stadium, and we'll talk more about why, that would have somewhere in the vicinity of a 12,000 seat sort of capacity if you were doing an entertainment event or something like that. Everybody knows the key primary uses are the great soccer teams that we have here in Wake County, and Jim has talked about sort of the location. Let's go to the next piece here, and this reiterates the fact that there were a lot of different people that we talked to, and the reason I want to take a moment on this is a couple people that are even in the audience today that have been a big part of this. Steve Malik, who everybody knows, has been integral in working with us on thinking through this. Denny Edwards is in the room. He's been part of the thought process. We've talked to John Kane multiple times through this process to sort of get his input. There was an internal team that was part of this. So the county manager, the county assistant manager who's here, Denise Foreman, Ruffin Hall himself, Jim Green. That was a team of 4 that we met with several times to sort of work through this. So there was a lot of collaboration in sort of thinking through this together. So when you think of the outcome, think about the fact that a lot of great minds that we are thankful for. I want to also add the Hospitality Alliance was also involved in looking at some of the data and working with us on that too. So you can see a couple of things here that we looked at. Jim mentioned the destination strategic plan, so we talked about some of the things that came out of that plan. One of them, if you remember, was this. So this was actually called out in the plan. At that point, it had a little bit different vision at that point, but the notion of this as a potential placemaking opportunity in Wake County and in Raleigh was part of this. The whole notion of the Wake County market, we talked to a lot of people about that. We talked to entertainment industry experts. And one of the other things that we did is we looked objectively at trends related to soccer, and specifically the soccer that is currently here in Wake County, and looked at other markets and sort of what some of those trends are, and we're going to talk about those. This just illustrates the fact that one of the questions that was asked, especially in the entertainment area, was if part of the design of a facility like this or a venue like this is to make sure we can do multiple, sort of types of events, are these events going to be incremental, if you will, to Raleigh/Wake County, or are we just going to be moving events around sort of from other venues? And what I'll say is the way that when you see our programming model, which you're going to see in a second, and our discussion with some of the experts that we worked with, we believe that on the entertainment side, and one of the reasons for the sizing is we think that is incremental when it comes to new opportunities for Raleigh and Wake County, and this is some of the feedback that we got, and we'll talk through that here in a second. Also, you'll notice this lower left-hand bullet point. There are a lot of markets, of course, that have the teams from the same leagues that we do in terms of soccer, and when you look at the attendance trends, especially in those markets where they have renovated or built new stadiums or created an enhanced sort of fan experience, if you will, for those attending soccer games, the trends are positive in terms of growth, attendance growth. So if you look at the next piece here, again, is reiterating the fact that this national trend when it comes to soccer, also the fact that we think there's an opportunity to make this, to part of this outcome is entertainment. Here's another piece that we looked at, and that was in some of these samples that you see here, developing venues in areas, new areas, if you will, of cities or counties, does do other things besides just have the venue there. So it can help increase property tax values. It can spawn new business success in an area. And by the way, it's not just because of the actual events that are in the particular venue, but the sort of vibrancy that the venue brings can enhance development, in and around the stadium. The other point you'll notice here is we believe very strongly, especially after all the conversations we had, that having just a single-use stadium is probably not the right direction, that we really need to think of something here that's multi-use, that can do multiple things, and you'll notice here concerts, festivals, and maybe other types of events. So right here on this slide, what you'll see is our first attempt here, with again, the collaboration that you saw, to think about what programming might look like in a venue like this. So if you look at this table, you see roughly 45 soccer events. That includes the 2 professional teams as well as Shaw University. We spoke to Shaw at length in the conversation, had some great dialogue with them. They see interface here with this venue potentially that we think is exciting. The flexibility of the field is an important piece of this. Then you'll also notice if you go one line down, we projected 4 to 6 sort of specialty sports events. So these could be tournaments, these could be exhibitions that we thought were doable in our conversations with experts out there in the industry. We focused on 6 to 8 concerts. We think that's what's again a very realizable number. You'll notice here we have forecasted 1 large-scale festival as part of the programming, and ultimately 3 additional festivals as part of sort of looking at, if you will, a stable year, or kind of a year when we were really fully up and running. So what you can see here is somewhere between 58 and 63 really sort of high-profile events in the venue on an annual basis. And when you think of that type of activity in a new area of the city/county, we think that's a great opportunity in terms of a great level of increased vibrancy. Go to the next piece here. This just reiterates one of the things that sort of is anecdotal, but it's an exciting piece. We had conversations with producers of large-scale festivals, and we talked to them about things that would be important in venue design and the sort of the surrounding area from the proposed stadium. All sorts of interesting ideas about where this could go when it comes to producing an annual, very large, if you will, high-profile festival as part of the outcome of this. So we have a couple of pieces here. People ask, and there was part of the scope and discussion about what's the broader community impact. We feel a couple of things that we've seen with other developments or other mixed-use projects that have these kind of venues in them. One is the ability to support increased housing and commercial value. The second is obviously the ability for the community to engage, and we're going to show you numbers on the sort of local engagement that we see with a venue like this that we think is significant. New amenities for restaurants. One of the things that, of course, has got to be thought about in this is the notion of ingress and egress and how we're going to make the accessibility, if you will, of the venue something that is part of a great experience. And again, thinking about this kind of vibrancy. So 60-plus events, with the kind of attendance that we believe these events will have, we think there's a significant amount of direct and indirect spending that will occur. If you look at the next slide, a lot of numbers here, but let us focus on a couple of things. What we did, and if you start at the top where it talks about overnight visitors, what we did is we looked at each event type. So when you think about the model that we showed you where we had soccer games and we had concerts, and with each event type, we tried to look at through other venues and through our research, what percentage typically of the event type is either an overnight visitor, a day visitor, which by the way, the term day visitor is that they're driving from a little bit greater distance, or that are local Wake County / Raleigh residents. So you can see our breakdown here of sort of how we did that, which shows you that. What's interesting here is one of the questions that was asked was, well, isn't some of this activity already going on sort of in the county because we are moving essentially teams, we're not necessarily bringing in new teams. So if you'll notice, there's a percentage here underneath, and not to get too far in the weeds on all the data here, but there's a percentage where we said how many of these visitors, both either local day visitors or overnight, are new. So you'll see a percentage there that we've allocated that are new. So those either tie to new concerts, new festivals, or incremental attendance that we will believe will occur with the soccer teams when they're in this kind of venue. So this gives you an indication of the total impact. A couple of things to note, and that is that one, if you look at the overnight stays, we think that they're important. They certainly make an impact. We think that that's a realistic look at sort of overnight visitation. So that mix is important to consider. But when you look at total visitation, and so we think that one of the benefits of a venue like this is really what it's going to do for the local community, and that's going to be a big part of its impact. You can see how it sort of flows through to talk about sort of total impact there. Next piece that was part of the scope was to, oops, how do I do that? Well, I'll keep doing them. Sorry. I'm going to have arrows all over this. So if you look at the construction costs, what we did there is we tried to put together a range of construction costs for a really high quality experience. One of the things that the entertainment community told us is they said as part of the design of a venue like this, we need to make sure that the entertainment infrastructure is essentially built in, if you will, to the venue so that they can easily use the venue. One of the things we learned through studying some of the other markets when it comes to the teams that are here in Wake County is that enhancement of the actual fan experience. So enclosed seating, overhangs, ways to have people come to a soccer game and really have a really, if you will, upscale but nice experience is a big part of success. So you can see the kind of range of construction costs as it takes all that in. One other piece here, as you'll notice in that side piece, is one of the reasons to put that the costs are at the level they are is it is also with the architects we talked to, these costs are also designed to think about having the stadium have the ability to potentially host MLS soccer in the future. So the ability to add seating, have the kind of experience that you would need as part of qualifying for MLS in the future. So that's all built into this sort of range of costs that you see here. Next, this is a quick sort of review of a, what are you trying to? Get the arrows out of there? Yeah. This is a quick review of a pro forma. And here's the purpose of this when the council thinks about the question of, well, how could we ultimately put sort of a deal together? This is a pro forma that speaks to the idea that based on the activity levels you saw, what kind of, if you will, net revenue or sort of net income could potentially come from the operations of the venue. It's important to note that this doesn't necessarily include, of course, debt service. It doesn't include, capital costs. So this is truly operational revenue or net revenue and expenses. And the reason why this slide's important is because when we think about, again, what a structure might look like, it's important to note that there is, if you will, revenue where there's opportunity that comes from running the stadium, if you will, or operating the stadium in terms of sort of net revenue or net income. So the other thing that was mentioned was looking at examples of ownership and management models. So we have, she's gonna come over and you can take my arrows away here. Show me how to do this. This is the, kind of fun, they have the arrow. There we go, everybody's gonna miss the arrows now after the. So what we did here was we wanted to show 3 different approaches to sort of ownership and management models for a venue like this. If you look at the considerations on the left, so the whole point of operational risk, development costs, programming vision, capital improvements, ownership structure, we sort of wanted to look at all that and think about different ways to look at those 3. So the first one we want to talk about is called developer-led. So it's the idea that there are a couple of different potential funding sources, but one of them is bringing a private partner into the mix who puts capital, if you will, into the project and ends up essentially with sort of a long-term lease arrangement in terms of that partnership agreement, operates the venue, is responsible for the financial performance of the venue, and that becomes a piece of how the ultimate sort of, if you will, structure is put together. Those are relatively new in our industry, but they are starting to appear more and more, these type of models, if you will. So this is one we wanted to show you. Another one we're calling partnership, and people have seen this probably a lot when it comes to Major League Sports, but this is the idea of having the team themselves, so that the professional team become a bigger player when it comes to operating, owning, taking financial risk on the stadium itself or on the new venue. So you think about a lot of times in Major League Sports, the teams, some of you may not know that, but they also typically, or they do in many cases, operate the actual venues they're in. So there's models where the teams play a bigger role in terms of their functionality or what they do. And the third is a model that you've seen probably in other situations where, again, the building or the venue is financed publicly through different models. A management company is contracted through the city and county, and ultimately the city or county or both are sort of responsible for bottom line and capital expenditures and much more involved in the kind of day-to-day operations of the theater. The team is, of course, a tenant in that sort of involvement, and that's another potential model. So a quick summary, and I know we got to keep it brief, but a quick summary of what we've just talked about. One is, we see positive trends when it comes to soccer attendance and other if you will, markets where we think this is what we have projected in terms of growth is achievable. So we've projected that. Second, the importance of flexibility. So again, we think that making the investment to make sure that this venue has this ability to do multiple things so that it can create these entertainment opportunities, these festival opportunities, as well as the sports opportunities. Third, we really believe that there's a lot of vibrancy that's created here. So 60 new events, or if you want to call them new events, but 60 events that are located in that part of our county and that part of Raleigh, we think is a great, new, if you will, level of vibrancy. There's obviously growth in terms of public involvement, local involvement, some overnight involvement in terms of the stadium. And lastly, we think there are some different ways to approach how to both finance and model the most effective way to bring the stadium to life, if you will. Because the big question is, if everybody says, we think this is sort of an interesting thing, and how do we take it from here to, how do we bring it to life? We think some of those scenarios create opportunities for us to think differently about, how we might put together a structure that could support the developing the venue. So let me stop there. Ask for any questions, if that's okay. And Mr. Mayor.
Does anybody have any questions? Mr. Cox?
In your study, did you examine the historical performance of the soccer facility in Cary? So do you have any information in terms of what their attendance is, how many seats they were able to fill over a period of years?
We did. In the report, there's a sort of a deeper analysis there in the full report.
Okay.
We looked at couple of different data points. We looked at announced attendance in the stadium. We also didn't just sort of rely on that, so we also looked at other markets, and we tried to say, how is Wake County and Raleigh as a market compared to others? So our forecasts are a combination of both where are we today and what are our other markets doing.
Okay. Okay. And in terms of the future, if we build this, what would its impact be on future festivals and concerts that we had planned for Dix Park, for example?
Yeah, it's a great question. If you look at, just to go back real quick, if you look at the sort of programming model here, we think we were sort of realistic when it comes to our forecasting. And so if you notice, we said 6 to 8 concerts. If you look at the combination of that large annual event and maybe 3 others, so we think it's complementary. We also think that based on its design and sort of the mixed-use design around it, that it could be really complementary. Part of if you notice in the small-scale festivals, one of them we put down as existing, meaning that there's some festivals that we had conversations with some of the festival organizers that they feel like they might do better with a little bit more opportunity to either grow or how this was designed. So if you look at that level of activity, we think that's realistic and opens up the opportunity for others, if you will.
Okay, and similarly with festivals downtown, what would be the impact on festivals downtown? Would they move from downtown?
Yep.
I mean, they could potentially move to Dix Park, or they could
Right.
move to this facility. Are we looking at deserting our downtown?
Yeah. No, it's a great question, and that's why we really didn't. We put only one in there that we thought might move. So we didn't necessarily think that all of them would move, but we thought there could be one. And in conversations, even with the one that moved, it might be replaced by a smaller festival, even in the downtown area. There could be that combination. I mean, we're a big enough market to have multiple things going on. Okay. So we did try to contemplate that because it's one of the important parts about this, and that's why we had that percentage of new visitors, was there's definitely part of this activity that we're moving from one, so if you think about the soccer teams, we're moving them. It's not that they're new to us. We think there's growth there. So our model shows the growth as new, if you will, not all the attendance, if that makes sense.
Right. And then I guess my last question is more of an observation about the pro forma. And it looks like that the amount of revenues that would be coming in, we're talking about anywhere, in the first year, a little less than $2 million a year to about a little less than $5 million in year 10. And then out of that, the taxes that would be realized as a result of that, we're talking in hundreds of thousands of dollars, not millions of dollars. Is that correct?
When you say taxes, just which taxes? Sorry.
The hospitality tax.
That calculation is in there. Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
Okay.
And that's based on, again, not to get too far in the weeds, but that's based on taking each event type and really realistically saying how many of those are true out of town versus local or sort of day visitor. So that's really where that came from.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? Councilor Brufkin?
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Fenton, for being with us. In the organizational scenarios and models section, which one of these would be most similar to the Centennial Authority? Just trying to get a little orientation.
That's a good question. It would really be the second one, right? Even though, because the second one here, I'll click to that, is where, that's developer, it's where the team really plays a bigger role, in the operations of the venue. And the authority, by the way, we didn't talk about the potential for an authority, but that could be part of any one of these, by the way. But I would say that partnership model where the team plays a bigger role than just being a tenant, in the arena would probably be the most similar.
Okay, thanks. And one more, if I may.
Yes.
So I'm going to try to flip between slide 14 and slide
Whoops.
Sorry, slide 12,
Okay.
direct spending by day and overnight visitors, and slide 8 that's got the optimized programming and other users.
Yep.
Okay, so help me sort this out.
Sure.
On slide 8, we're talking about projected annual activity. 45 events would be existing events that would traditionally, have historically been held here, and they would move within the Raleigh area to the new stadium.
Correct.
Okay, but then on slide 12, in year 1, we're projecting 41% of the visitors would be new visitors. So this seems to be a little contradictory.
Yeah.
Can you help me sort this out?
Yeah. What we did is we made a calculation for incremental growth in visitors coming to those events because we have a nicer environment. And we really validated that because we, as much as we all work together, our job is to go validate that through other markets. And so we talked to some other markets about this that had moved teams from, let's just say, an okay experience to sort of this really improved experience. And they did show this kind of increment, in terms of attendance. Right, and I think if you think about it intuitively, there is a fan that is used to a particular type of experience, and this starts from the time you drive in to what goes on in the stadium, to the concessions, to all of it, which is what's contemplated here. And again, I'm not trying to be negative to our great stadium in Cary, but the sense is that there's an opportunity that would really enhance the fan experience. So that's what that increment is.
Got it. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay. Councilor Martin?
Thank you. I'll be quick. One of the main points that sticks out is that you mentioned that along with this development comes an increase in property taxes, as though that's a positive, and perhaps in some parts of town that would be. I've spent quite a bit of time, this is in my district, and I've spent a lot of time in that area, and most of the homes that have sold in that area recently have gone from anywhere between $120,000 and $180,000. And as we all know, that's hard to find in the city. And so I think that it's incumbent upon us as we move forward to ensure that any development that does happen, that the affordability component in the actual housing development is front and center, and that we are doing our part to ensure that the areas around there is protected as much as possible. And further, I just wanted to note for the council that whenever COVID is not something that we're fighting, that I've been in contact with Kane Realty, and we're planning to set up, and now have to stall, but we will be setting up community meetings that will be similar to the ones that the mayor set up, where the community has the opportunity to get the presentation via slide, and then we'll be they can get on a bus and go see the sites and give their feedback directly to the developers. So the goal was to do multiples of those over a series of weeks so that as many folks could get their feedback and input, given how large this project is.
Yep.
So I just wanted the council to be aware that engagement process will happen whenever we're able to actually make it happen. We were in the process, but had to pull that. So thank you for giving this presentation. I do have a couple other questions, but they're in the weeds, so I'll shoot you an email. So
Okay, great.
Thank you for
Happy
being
to
here.
answer.
Councilor Stewart?
Sorry, my back is to everybody. We are practicing good, healthy, safe social distancing, so we will roll with this. I have a question about this idea that on the higher cost end, there's a chance to be expandable to MLS specific play.
Yep.
And I'm going to say that we have an incredible internationally winning women's team, and I'm wondering what an MLS team might need that's in addition to what we would give our women. So I'm just
Right.
real curious about what that would mean.
Is your mic on?
I don't
No,
know.
No,
Your mic's not on.
My mic's not on.
but he heard you.
I heard you.
He heard you.
Yeah, I definitely heard you, yeah.
The thing is, people watching at home may not have heard because I don't think Councilor Stewart's mic's on. Could,
Yeah.
Um,
The question was in the construction cost slide here, we talked about part of this is the ability to be able, if you will, to evolve to an MLS stadium. And we have a world-class women's team here already in our county, highly regarded. And so the question is, to some degree, what's the difference? Meaning, so what's the need? And let's talk about, let me answer that two ways, because one thing that is definitely built in here is the type of fan experience that the women's team deserves, in a sense. So that the fan experience part of this, we not only believe, but the feedback we got plus what's built in there is definitely designed to deliver that fan experience. That would be the same, would absolutely be the same. Where the kind of expandability is in what the current MLS requirements are in terms of number of seats. So it's really the ability to expand the number of seats that is what that really relates to in terms of having it built in a way where we could do that. So it is not an experiential difference. It's a required capacity difference that we have learned when it comes to MLS requirements.
Thank you.
Councilor Brage?
I just want to concur with Councilor Martin about making sure that as we move forward, we think about the surrounding neighborhoods and making sure that they're part of that. And also, Councilor Martin, let me know when those tours are, because I have residents in my district that also would like to participate and I'm sure provide input, because this is right on, if we go across the street, you're in my district where this is located. So we definitely have to make sure that, as a city and as councilmen, it's a joint effort. And also, I was looking in your other data in the appendix, and one thing that I think was missing that we should also look at is North Carolina High School Athletic Association and the potential there. I don't see them listed here. Maybe they're considered other sporting events, but I think a neutral site for our High School Athletic Association for their activities will also garner some support. Right now, a lot of times they have to leave Raleigh or Wake County for neutral sites, and I think this is something that we can help do, especially with over 32 local high school and state champions here in Wake County.
Great.
Councilor Knight?
So mine's a little bit of follow-up to Councilor Branch's and also others' question about, there is concern, obviously, with it not having an MLS team in the near future. I guess we're looking at, so where are we going to come up with the numbers of people to use it? And so in terms of the use days, how to get that. So the optimized programming / other uses, that number 58 to 63, so that with the number of people that those events will bring in, you're modeling it to get you to the number that you think needs to be for this to be a success?
Well, we're really doing it based on the market.
Okay.
Right, so we're really trying to say, what do we think the market can support? Because if you think about that word success, there's a lot of definitions for that word, but
financial and otherwise.
yeah, but we're saying we think the market can support this. And again, when you look at the attendance outline, we wanted to make sure that it was clear that not all that attendance was new, but that there was some that was clearly incremental. And so we think when you look at that slide, we think that is achievable in terms of the programming that we've got here based on the work that we've done.
But Joel, you will be looking for almost any type of sporting event that would fit into the size of field
Yeah.
event, I suppose. I understand that football does not fit into this type of arena.
Yeah, you'll see in the full report, one of the challenges is compatibility with football. So when you get into fields and that whole piece, and you think about, there's certain sports, rugby's another, where there really has to be some thought put into how a field can service multiple types of sports. Right. But what we did, the 4 to 6 specialty sports events that's in there, I don't want to downplay that, because you mentioned high school championships or exhibition games or other things. So in conversations, for example, with Denny Edwards and his team, and who are some of those potential players? So we actually thought about specifically, what are some of those specialty sports events that could come? And I think that encompasses that opportunity. And having 4 to 6 of those annually, if we can hit that mark, that's another nice boost. And that was a boost in attendance too, in terms of the overall attendance numbers.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I'll be very brief just to round out the table. Thank you for this work. I acknowledge that with so much going on in the world and in the state right now that the timing of this presentation is odd, to say the least. But I know you presented to the Wake County Commissioners yesterday, and this was a partnership study, and that we have to also receive the information so that we can keep the process moving forward, since we've made a joint investment in this. So I thank you for your time, and I thank you for everyone for watching and for your patience.
Well, that is true. And we thought of canceling, but seeing you were in town, made a special trip here. The county saw this yesterday. We said it's only fair that we move this forward. Couple of things that I wanted to mention. This is a very conservative viewpoint, as we discussed. Second, it does not account for Red Hat Amphitheater and what might happen there. And that could move some concerts to this venue. The other thing I want to mention, Councilor Martin and Councilor Branch, I think we need to keep two things separate. The stadium is different from the whole project. Mm-hmm. This is just a project. What we're discussing today is the stadium. So other issues relating to neighborhood and affordable housing and greenways and some of the things that greenway enhancements, I should say. Some of the things that they're proposing through the development, that's the proper context to have that discussion. So, and I'm glad that we're making some movement eventually on making those meetings happen. Having heard everybody's comments and also having watched some of the County Commission meeting yesterday, they are looking to us for some guidance as well. This has been a joint project. What I would like to ask staff to do is get together with Wake County and figure out some scenarios that for funding and for the organizational setup. In other words, come back to us with more information and a plan. And I know, as you said, Jonathan, it's kind of strange to be having this conversation, but we also can't stop everything. We've got to move our city forward. And right now, too, there's not much. Well, everybody's pretty stressed, but this is something that we could really look forward to in the future. So I thank you again, and thank you for your time and for being here. Okay.
Great, thanks everybody. Thank you.
Is everybody good with that?
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Okay. All right, you have your direction then, city manager? Okay. Okay. Next, we're going to ask the city manager for a, we're going to start off the meeting with a review of what's been happening the last week. And I want to remind everybody, it's been a week.
So we're now starting our regular city council meeting. We're leaving the work session.
Yes,
Okay.
starting this. So yes, it's 1 o'clock, so after 1 o'clock. So the city manager is going to detail for us some of the work the city has been doing. We are then going to hear from Derek Reamer about, what his department has been working on, and then from our city attorney. And then we will have a discussion about our meeting schedule and whatnot before we get into some of the agenda items. Okay. Hey, everybody roll with this because it is an abbreviated meeting. Things are different. Our lives are going to be different for a long time now. So let's go.
Let's go. Thank you, Mayor and Council. I just wanted to make a couple of brief remarks before turning it over to Derek Reamer in Emergency Management and Special Events. Obviously, things have changed. With the constant changes taking place in our community related to the COVID-19 situation, I wanted to give you an update on some of the actions that we're taking to address the issue. As everyone can appreciate, we're doing everything in our power in the city of Raleigh to keep in alignment with the latest recommended guidance from our local, county, state, and federal partners. As we've all experienced, the conditions and guidance from our key partners is constantly changing and evolving. Some of the actions we've taken may need to be shifted or extended, depending on how the situation continues to unfold. Even in this time of great uncertainty, the city remains focused on doing our job. During this trying time, I wanted to clearly state we have 3 primary goals. First, we are going to do everything we can to help slow the spread of the COVID-19 virus. Secondly, we are going to continue to provide great service to our community. And third, we are going to achieve the first 2 goals by supporting each other and working together as a team. I think this is particularly important for all of us, both personally and professionally, as our community works through this together. In a moment, I'm going to ask Derek Reamer with our Office of Emergency Management and Special Events to provide you a detailed list of some of the specific statements that we've taken to try to address these goals for our community. Before I turn it over to Mr. Reamer, I wanted to share with you a couple of messages that we've sent to our employees as an illustration of some of the comments that we're making to folks, and perhaps folks that are watching this at home or in their offices can appreciate these comments. Even though this may be a crisis that none of us have ever experienced, I have very strong confidence that the city of Raleigh is prepared to handle it. With so much of the unknown, the community will look to us to help lead them through this event, and that's true for all of us, both personally and professionally. We are also an organization that cares about people, and we care about each other, both folks that are in our community as well as our professional colleagues every single day. So I want all of us to remember to check on our neighbors, check on our coworkers, make sure that they're doing okay and that they have what they need. People respond to anxiety and uncertainty in different ways. So I've also encouraged our folks to remain patient with one another and with residents and citizens who may be demonstrating some of that anxiety and uncertainty. And finally, it's very important to us that we demonstrate personal leadership in making smart decisions and supportive actions to everyone. So I know this is a difficult time, but I am very confident that we are up to this challenge. We have a strong organization that has faced adversity in the past and overcome obstacles. Together, we will get through this challenge as well. So now I'm going to turn it over to Derek Reamer to go over some of the specific things that the City of Raleigh is doing.
Good afternoon. Just when I was getting used to the new seating arrangement. Go ahead and start with the general situation report, which has already changed since I put this together this morning. North Carolina now has 45 presumptive positive cases. 15 of those are here in Wake County. You can see the numbers across the world and within the United States continue to grow, and therefore we are taking this very seriously. There have been a number of emergency declarations and orders that have come out, and you can see they have come very, very quickly, and they continue to get a little bit more restrictive. The state of North Carolina is under a state of emergency. Wake County also is under a state of emergency, which the city of Raleigh joined as part of that state of emergency. There's a nationwide state of emergency and a number of executive orders from the governor. The latest was on March 14th, which prohibits the mass gatherings of 100 people or more and the closure of all the schools. Just yesterday, based off some of the CDC recommendations, the state has now recommended limiting mass gatherings of 50 or more as well. A couple of the current actions we've been taking as an organization and for our employees. We have encouraged teleworking and flexible schedules as much as possible, alternating schedules, staggered schedules, any tool that we can give our supervisors to continue that mission of our service while also encouraging the social distancing and keeping our employees safe. We've canceled all business travel. We've modified our leave policies to help with dependent care. This, again, is another tool for flexibility to make sure people can take care of their home obligations while making sure we can continue our mission. We do have 10 employees across the city that are currently in self-quarantine. They're monitoring their symptoms because of various circumstances. So again, we are not immune to this as an employer. We've done quite a bit to promote health and hygiene for all of our employees. Everything from hand sanitizers around, social distancing as you see here today, and lots of hand washing posters that are at our city facilities. And our 911 calls are continuing to be screened, and that's an effort to make sure our first responders are protected before they go out to any call as they continue their jobs 24/7. Number of actions for the community. We've canceled all festivals and programming with more than 50 people through April 15th. This includes all of our special events, the Convention Center, Performing Arts Center, Red Hat, Walnut Creek, and all of our parks programming. It's important to note that I think the last time I was here, we had done that to the 100-person mark. It's since been lowered to 50, and it could quite possibly go lower than that. Just as April 15th is an initial deadline we've put on there, but it could likely go further as well based off of guidance we received from the county and the state. As of this afternoon at 5 p.m., Parks and Recreation will close all of our facilities. Our greenways and open spaces will remain open. Raleigh Water will not disconnect water service. This is another point where we're trying to make it as easy on the public as possible, and I think that's an important effort that they've undertaken. We continue ongoing outreach to the small business community. Our economic development staff was at a meeting yesterday with a number of small business owners, and they continue to work with the small business community to do what we can and within our scope to help them through this time. Just earlier this afternoon, and what will be reiterated at a 2 p.m. press conference by the governor, all bars and restaurants will be closing today at 5 p.m. It's important to note this is something that we don't necessarily have the ability to regulate, so with the governor's action, that will supersede anything we would have done at the local level. Those restaurants will close at 5 except for takeout and delivery, and so we encourage everybody to please try to remember our small businesses and help them as much as possible. You'll see some of the parking signs behind you. These are some efforts that were actually taken before this announcement today, where we're trying to change some of our parking regulations to allow for curbside pickup. I think the city attorney has some items she'll need you to address in a little bit to solidify that, as well as relaxing some of the regulations with the restocking of goods and materials and deliveries to restaurants and stores. Finally, I want to leave you with just some resources. There's a lot of misinformation out there, and it's just really important to make sure that people are being directed to reliable sources of information. So if anybody has questions, please go to these websites, the CDC, North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services, Wake County, and of course our own city website. So with that, I will take any questions you might have.
One.
Councilor Branch.
You mentioned the parks being closed. When are we going to make that announcement?
That announcement is forthcoming, Oscar, this afternoon. It'll come out officially in a press release, but we wanted to go ahead and bring it to your attention right now.
Okay, all right, because I just wanted, because we have been receiving plenty of material this morning about it, and we just want to make sure the residents know that our parks, the facilities will be closing, but the outdoor spaces will remain
Yes,
open as weather
the facilities themselves will
permits.
closing, but all the greenways and that open space will still be available, and I
Right.
think it's important for everybody to get that fresh air right now.
Definitely, thank you.
No problem.
Councilor.
You mentioned the ongoing outreach to small businesses. I've heard from a lot of small business owners who are scared. A lot of people are scared, but the small business owners having to, close for dining in the restaurants and bars closing. I know the situation is rapidly evolving, and I see Veronica here, but what is our plan to continue to engage in that dialogue? And I guess sort of what is our plan to support and to receive information?
And I think if I can ask Veronica, you want to come up and speak to that for just a moment?
Good afternoon, Mayor, Council. Thank you for the question, Councilmember Melton. So yesterday afternoon, we hosted a listening session, invited small businesses. We limited access to this space to 40. We had more than 70 people connect via live stream. Our friends at Shop Local Raleigh, Jennifer, hosted the site, as did our own City of Raleigh website as well. So we knew we had at least 100 people. You're right, folks are scared. We got to call it what it is. We try to equip people with as much information that we have in real time. So our office has launched a website and resource page for small businesses. So if you go to the city's website, through economic development, we have a COVID-19 resource page. One of our team members, Mark Weldon, is our lead with the SBA, and we have Rafael Baptista is our lead with our 11 business alliances. Every one of these groups are talking to insurance companies, trying to understand how insurance plays a role here. I feel, just based on the notes that I'm reading, there are some provisions in insurance policies that this may fit under, and there are clear provisions in other policies viruses don't fit under. So there's some big topics, unemployment, insurance, that small businesses need guidance on now. So we're tapping into our state and federal partners to help answer those questions. For the most part, we're reviewing it, it's in process, we're going to let you know as soon as we know, but those answers will be updated on our ED&I resource page as soon as we get more information.
And just so I can make sure to have that information handy, so if I'm on the ED&I page of our websites, on here it's going to be under where?
I think it's actually under resources or news. I'm sorry, I don't actually have that in front
That's
of me.
fine. I can connect with you, and I'll make sure we get it
I'll
out.
make
But
sure
for
everybody
anybody
gets it as well.
listening at home that
Yep, sorry
may
about
want
that.
to connect on this issue,
I'll give it to you before the end of this meeting,
Okay,
so we
thank you.
can announcement. Thank you.
And to that point, it strikes me that that is an opportunity to uplift this issue perhaps closer to our homepage or something along those lines. I think that's probably just an issue for our awesome communication staff to figure out a way, but it seems to be something that we're all getting bombarded with, and rightfully so. And so I think to bring that up out of that page and
real-time
put it on-
update, it is on the homepage. I found
Okay,
it.
good.
Is it?
Yeah,
Good.
if you go to the
Thank you.
general Raleigh COVID-19 link, the EDI stuff's on there.
Perfect.
Yes, I was going to say,
You're
and
one
this
step
is
ahead of me.
for, if I could, Mayor, to Councilmember
No, I'm
Melton's
sorry.
points. Yeah. Trying to follow the rules. I do think what we are going to be doing is trying to focus folks through that COVID-19 website piece. So
Okay.
lots of things are going to be coming in, so we're going to be consolidating it under that piece. So if you do get any questions on any topic, push them to the COVID-19 page through our homepage on the website, and then that category will be
Okay,
there.
perfect. I see it.
And
Thank
if I
you.
may share, also from yesterday's meeting, we tracked every single question, and I put a report together, shared it with our city manager late last night. It took me that long just to crunch everything together, just so you could see and feel the temperature and mood of our business owners. And they're asking some real strategic questions. So I would invite you to look at that list of, can the city do blank? And there's just a whole list of, from waiving fees, which we're way ahead of. You heard Derek talk about some of that. And then there's some real specific, can our leadership lean in on rent forgiveness, pushing rent back, attaching 2 months' rent on the back of a lease? We don't control that, but we're being asked to lend our voice to some of that guidance. So I'm sure that you'll see some of those questions coming your way pretty soon.
And to that, maybe our great DRA can work with us and get with some of our landlords and have a meeting to discuss that, because I know the small business, their impact, but, you know, to be fair, look at some of the landlords and see what they can do. I think this has to be a time where we all come together. So to the landlords that are out there in Raleigh, this is a time for you to step up and help everyone move forward.
Yeah, DRA has been very active.
They have.
And I want to thank Bill King. He has been working with our parking team. Matthew, thank you, too, for really, I mean, this was a 24-hour effort. So we have signs going up. We have the whole pickup and, takeout thing happening. People recognized that there was urgency. And it really does show and demonstrate how people have come together.
So I'm in touch with Bill quite regularly, as well as Jeff Mearson and the other. We have 11 business alliances.
Yep.
Because this is affecting folks all around the city. We might see it and feel it most downtown in concentration, but I've been visiting businesses all over the city. Folks are starting curbside this weekend. They were already setting that up before guidance even came out. But we have 11 business alliances like Bill who have networks of hundreds of members. So we're actually hitting a lot of folks with information. And again, Jennifer with Shop Local Raleigh covers the whole city. But I appreciate you calling on our landlords, because that is probably most important right here downtown.
And also, if Mayor, if I can, I want to take it one step further, and I'm going to ask if maybe our housing and neighborhoods can get with our other landlords for homeowners. With people not working, not able to work, if we can bring them together and work with, those residents. We're not saying don't pay your bills. If you have the money, pay it. But we have to be smart and intelligent, because some people are having issues now getting to work because they can't. So if we could have, even from that standpoint, whatever information we can provide through our housing and neighborhoods, to provide that on the website, I think that would be helpful as well to direct landlords and tenants.
Yes, and you may have noted yesterday that Justice Beasley said there will be no cases of eviction or foreclosure moving forward during this crisis, which also helps a lot. I'd also like to encourage the Raleigh Housing Authority to really be aware they are guarding our most vulnerable citizens. No evictions moving forward. We need to be together on all of this.
And we have had small businesses, as of yesterday, lay off full staffs. So
Yes.
yesterday morning it was, let's
Started.
see, what do we need to do? As of today, particularly servers, some of our most vulnerable employees have now full staffs have been laid off.
Okay. Councilor Stewart, did you have something?
No, I just want to thank and appreciate everybody's thoughtfulness on this issue. Our staff has been incredible in their response on COVID. Every time I've got an idea, they're already working on it. So I think it really is on us to be making sure we're sharing information as much and as widely as we can. So sharing Chief Justice Beasley's information on evictions, sharing what our Public Utilities Department is doing on water, sharing what Duke Energy is doing on making sure folks have energy. I'm very moved by the response of this community, both our own organization, but also Wake County Commission and the school board, and it gives me a bit of hope for the future. So that's all. Thank you.
Okay.
And thank you, Derek.
Thank you.
Councilor Knight?
Yeah, thank you. Obviously, we're all incredibly concerned about the economic impact that this crisis is having on our world and country, but we're focused on the city right now. And so in terms of the sharing, I think that's a great idea. I'm going to have a conference call with some small businesses later today. I think they're all coming up with, thoughts, ideas. Veronica, what is the best way for us to put forward ideas, and for individuals, businesses to put forward ideas about how we can continue talking about how we can do everything we can to help our businesses, to get the information out to our businesses in the city about sort of next steps, about where things are going to go. Then Derek, I want to ask you some specific questions about some of the governor's, what he just proclaimed or is going to later today. But
Sure.
So, because I think this is a priority as we go through this. We got to take these safety precautions, but we also need to be mindful of what we can be doing in the meantime. I know, best practices, what are other cities doing, and where we can share that information as widely as possible, and then start moving on some of that, those ideas.
So I think as City Manager Hall just mentioned, if we go through the COVID-19 site, at the city's website, you'll see economic development, and we are keeping our resource page updated literally multiple times a day as we get information. Our 11 alliances, including Shop Local Raleigh, DRA, Hillsborough Street, Cameron Village, 5 Points, just to give you a flavor of getting across the city, have agreed to then, when we make updates, shoot that information out to their networks as well. We're already thinking through how to have webinars for completing unemployment forms. I think there's going to be new sets of forms. We have understood to this point that most resources will be online, so we won't need to be printed papers, and we won't have to have like people meeting or anything like that, but rather that we could host technical assistance calls, either ourselves or connecting with the appropriate state or federal group to make sure folks know that these technical assistance calls are available to get folks through the application processes and in line signed up for whatever the next resource is. We are waiting for confirmation on a couple of small business resources that we're looking forward to the federal government to release to the states. I think we may hear more about that in the governor's press conference this afternoon. So our website is the number one site.
And what I would do, David, is direct them to the city website for information.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Thank you, Raleigh. Derek, real quick, I just want to ask him,
Let's
yeah, can we
move
get
this
this
along.
PowerPoint presentation?
Yes, sir,
I don't think we have it.
absolutely.
And then could you go to the one where the governor's proclamation? This may seem
The list of proclamations, this one?
the actual the language or what he's going to talk about today about the restaurants and bars closing.
That's just an excerpt. We've got a release from the governor's office today that said that he would be mandating all bars and restaurants close effective 5 p.m. today, with the exception of takeout and delivery, and that's
So
about the extent
that's what I'm
of it to
asking.
this
So
point.
what is it been defined what takeout means or how you can do that? I'm thinking of a Subway type of restaurant where you actually go in there and you tell them what you want and then you may take it away. Do you know, are they getting that fine on in terms of what the difference is in takeout, or can you go into the restaurant? Do you have to call it or do it online? Do you know what the
I can't speak to the
definition is now?
details on what they will hopefully get out in about 25 minutes from now.
Yep.
Thank you.
Sorry.
If I could really quick, the PowerPoint presentation, it has now been posted into Board Docs, so if you refresh, but I'm saying also for the people watching, it's in our Board Docs meeting schedule now.
Okay.
I've been contacted by bus drivers who are concerned about their health and the health of riders, and I was wondering if we could update our website to let the public know what measures are being taken to ensure that our buses are safe. What are we doing in terms of cleaning the buses? Are we limiting the number of people who can ride on a bus at any given time? What's the distance between, some communities are increasing the distance between the drivers and the riders by reserving or setting aside certain rows of seats so that they can't be occupied. And I think it would be useful if we can update that information and put it out there so that people have an understanding of what to expect.
Absolutely. I think we can do that.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll be very brief. I just want to say thank you, and I encourage the staff to keep doing what you're doing. Your professionalism, your competence, your calm in this situation will give our citizens the confidence they need to know that we will get through this. We will get through this. We'll be a stronger community for it, and I appreciate the work you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, City Attorney, you have a resolution that you want to present to us?
Yes, thank you very much. As everybody has said, everything is moving really fast and changing very quickly. Our office has been working with the city manager and the mayor and some other staff on trying to find some ways for you to act today, that in case something happens and we can't have a meeting for a while, that we're still able to do the business of the city, among other things. So there are two documents in front of you, and I've sent them to you earlier. One of them is a resolution, and it does several things. One of the things it does, the first thing, is that it states during the time of the state of emergency, the city manager will have the authorization from council to execute any contract he deems necessary, regardless of the amount of money involved. There are certain limitations now. If something were to happen and council couldn't approve a contract, this would allow the city manager to move forward with those contracts in order to keep the city operating. It also would allow the city manager to make budget transfers in order to fund those contracts if needed. The resolution would also require the city manager to report at the end of the state of emergency everything that he had approved. So we'd have to bring it back later and show the council in an effort to be totally transparent. We think this is important in case something comes up very quickly and the council isn't able to act. The second thing allows, you may remember that the water director has committed to not turn off service for any customer. And that's someone who's has not already had their water turned off. Our ordinances say that if water has already been disconnected, that it would take an act of the council in order to reinstate that without certain steps being taken, like repayment. This resolution would allow the Raleigh Water Director to reinstate previously disconnected accounts during the state of emergency without paying the balance. The next thing the resolution does is it and Derek talked about this, and this would suspend the rules that have restrictions on hours of delivery and times things can be picked up and delivered. These appear a lot in zoning conditions and maybe in the code here and there, but this would allow flexibility to get needed supplies to the public during the state of emergency. In other words, if I've got a tractor trailer of, toilet paper and disinfectant wipes, and I can only drop it off at 11 p.m., and the restrictions are that you can't deliver past 6, this would allow that delivery to get there. The last thing that the resolution does is it continues the public hearings that are scheduled for today to the next normal meeting that would occur, which is April 7th. We don't know where we'll be remote, we'll be here or whatever it is, but we need to reschedule that so they're not heard today. And it also has to another thing to the next date on which a council meeting is actually held. We're going to get to April 7th today and then go from there. Now, that's the first resolution. I'll go on to the ordinance, and then you'll need to talk, or you can talk about them together, but vote on them separately. The ordinance has to do with this curbside pickup zone, and this actually found a spot in the code better than just a resolution. And basically what it says is during a state of emergency, and would go past this particular state of emergency, that the city manager can suspend parking regulations and reserve on-street spaces for purposes that he deems would serve the public good. And again, this is to allow this take out, pick up, that normally you couldn't, you just reserve part of the street in front of certain establishments to allow people to get in and out and pick up things. So that's what you've got, and you can discuss, or someone can make a motion, but both of them would need a vote in order to move forward.
I'm going to make a motion to approve both ordinances. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second.
I
Do we
think
have
we're
to do
supposed
one
to do them
at a time? They have to be
separately.
separate.
Do the
Do them one-
resolution first. They're just different animals.
Resolution first.
Everyone jumped in on that fast.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. The ordinance.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you.
That's all I have.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So, I think the city manager and the city attorney are sick of talking to me, but that's okay. I want to thank them for their work, but I also want to thank our staff for all that they've done. I really want to acknowledge the work that our State Department of Health and Human Services has done, the Governor's Office, Wake County Human Services. They're leading on this challenge, and we have been working closely with all of them hand in hand. Just a couple of things I wanted to mention. First off, be kind. See a lot of talk on social media where it's judgmental, mean-spirited. We need each other now, and we need to be kind to each other. Find joy. Joy is a choice. It's a hard choice when we're going through a time like this, but it is a choice. and do things for each other. I think Ruffin mentioned check in on your neighbors. You know, if they're over age 60 or have a secondary risk, ask if you can do an errand for them. Ask if you can help. You can volunteer to babysit for critical need workers, send cards and notes to people in nursing homes, make a donation to your favorite charity. I was on a conference call yesterday with 30 corporate givers, and the generosity that is coming through from our business community is outstanding. And as we're talking, buy takeout, you know, patronize restaurants. They're going to need our help the most. So in thinking of all of this, I just want to say, you know, we've gone through a lot of change in the past week. We are going to go through a lot more change in the next week, and the next week, and the next week. Everybody, be patient. And I'm just going to say it again. Be kind. Thank you. All right, now we have to decide about meetings. And in this,
Madam Mayor, just one quick question. Is our pastor here for the invocation?
Oh.
He's actually present, so I was wondering if we could, the pastor and the pledge, because we skipped those two.
okay, can we finish with this first, and then before we start the,
No problem.
are you okay? Just, okay, thank you. Council district meetings, recommending that we cancel those through April 15th. Committee meetings, canceled through April 15th, and boards and commissions canceled through April 15th. I'm also going to ask staff to look at options for virtual meetings, especially paying attention to April 7th, when our next meeting is scheduled. We have a number of public hearings. Just trying to figure out how we're going to make that happen. That timing will be, I mean, we're going to be in the mid of this crisis. So how can we do this virtually? I also want to ask staff, when you're looking at virtual meetings, to also give preference to our housing bond group that's meeting, our Parks and Recreation bond group that's meeting, Planning Commission, Board of Adjustment, and the RHDC. All of those are Board of Adjustment, RHDC, quasi-judicial. That makes it a little more complicated. Planning, we've got to keep moving things forward, so let's figure out how we can do this virtually. I don't know if we need a motion on this or not. We need a motion?
Well, you definitely need a motion to cancel, postpone the various meetings, and especially boards and commissions, until
Okay.
April 15th. As far as the other, I think you're good for just telling us to figure out how to do it.
Okay, then this is a motion to cancel all council district meetings, committee meetings, and board and commission meetings through April 15th. We'll evaluate whether we further suspend those at that time. Do I have a second? Second. Okay, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, thank you very much. Pastor, I'm sorry. Please come up. And I'm sure your words are going to have special meaning today, too.
Let's pray.
Thank you.
God, right now we just come to you, and first off, we just thank you, Father, that you've created us and that you love us and that you care about us. And God, during this time, we ask that people will realize how much you love them, how much you care about them, and that love that you have given to us, God, that we will also love others in that same way, God. I pray that we will represent you, will be your hands and your feet here on this planet, Lord, and care for one another and help one another. God, I ask right now for this leadership here in the city. God, we just thank you for their leadership. We thank you for giving them wisdom and direction, God. We thank you that you strengthen them and that you comfort them, Father, as well. Lord, I pray that you'll meet their needs. God, we just lift up this city right now. God, we just ask that you'll protect this city, that you'll prosper this city, that even in this time of difficulty, God, I pray that you will bring peace and that you will bring joy here in this place. God, we trust you, Father. We don't trust in our own ability. We don't trust in our own knowledge, God, but we ask that you will give us the ability. We'll ask that you will give us the wisdom and the direction, Lord God. And we just thank you right now in advance, God, that we will come out on the other side of this difficult time, blessed and prosperous. Amen.
Amen. Thank you very much. Okay, now on to the consent agenda. Do I have a motion to approve that?
So moved.
Okay, all in favor? Consent agenda. You want to know who made the motion? Counselor Buffkin, second by Counselor Cox. Yep, please use your microphones if you can. Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Next, we are, as I said, we are just going to handle a few items today that need our attention. The first one on the agenda is the Compassion Fund update. I do not see Mr. Jarvis here.
So the short version of this particular presentation, Mayor, is that we are continuing to work with particular partners, Oak City Cares as well, for options on how we can put the fund in place, as well as there within your packet is a list of proposed criteria associated with that. And the question that is before you today is whether or not that criteria fits the definition of what the council was thinking when asking about the Compassion Fund, and looking for your direction for us to continue to move that forward.
Can we go to that page with the criteria?
We can. I believe that's correct, number 4. So if
Has everybody had an opportunity? Oh.
So if I could for just a second for those watching at home, actually. So we are practicing social distancing within our council chamber. And so we've asked staff to remain outside the room until their item came up. So that came a little quick, and I'm sure Mr. Jarvis was watching and on his way. But for those watching at home, yes, I see him now.
I didn't know that was delayed broadcast in your conference room
That's right. But, that's right. But actually, for the purposes of future meetings as well, there may be occasionally a delay as we get staff in the room. So practicing social distancing. So with that, I will turn it over to someone who knows a lot more about this than I do.
Social distancing, a word that we never knew until a week ago.
Right.
Yeah.
So again, we were asked to look at, So again, we were asked to look at creating a new program that would assist people who are living in hotels with children who have the ability to pay those daily rates but don't have the first month's rent and the utility deposit. And we were asked to look at working with Oak City Cares and nonprofit providers. As we met with Oak City Cares, what we found out is that there's already kind of that program in place to a certain extent already, working with the Wake County Public School McKinney-Vento District Liaison for Students in Transition. Basically, that is someone who is working with those families, knows them well, is already in a position to know which ones would be successful. So we are ready to put forth a program proposal for you. There would be no administrative or service delivery fee. This would have to be an activity that nonprofits would take because this is part of their mission. And we would propose to do that by way of a letter of interest with a 30-day response time. And again, the guidelines: households with children living in hotels, incomes 50% AMI or below, The need for the assistance must be demonstrated and documented. No more than one instance of assistance during a 36-month period. Rent amounts must be within the fair market rent limits. The maximum assistance per household of $2,800. So that would be action that we're asked, or direction we're asking from you today as to whether or not you want us to proceed with that letter of interest process in selecting a nonprofit.
Does anybody have any questions?
I do. Hi. Could you go back to the last slide, please, Mr. Jarvis?
Yep.
Thank you.
That one?
Yes, perfect. Could you explain the fourth bullet, no more than one instance of assistance during a 36-month period, and what types of assistance you all are, what that sort of means to you all?
This type of assistance, getting you out of a hotel, that if we have identified someone who's in a hotel now, and with this assistance, the first month's rent and the security deposit, plus supportive services as appropriate, should be able to sustain living in permanent private housing, that we would not circle back and they go back into a hotel again.
But this is saying that the Compassion Fund wouldn't be eligible for folks that have received other types of assistance.
No, only the Compassion Fund assistance. Only this assistance again.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Sorry, as it was worded, I was confused.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, this type of assistance again.
Council Melton?
Yeah, and I know there's been a lot of discussion about this, the amount of money in the fund. Our intent was to allocate $25,000 from contingency to seed it.
Right.
So I think we have to be looking at two channels, how we're going to implement and then the long-term viability of the fund. I know when we brought it up, there was discussion about a real opportunity to do private partnerships for contributions or reaching out to the private sector.
Second part of the questions I'm going to have for you.
Wonderful.
Okay. So the first question is whether you want us to proceed with selecting a nonprofit in accordance with these guidelines by using a letter of interest process. And then I'll go ahead and fast forward. I'm not doing that very well, am I? But we need to look at a mechanism for receiving additional charitable or philanthropic contributions. And if you wanted to, so that we can explore the creation of a compassion fund with Oak City Cares or a similar entity that would be the fund manager. And then as that fund manager receives those contributions, they would have to make a donation to the city of Raleigh, and that donation would then need to be appropriated and budgeted for expenditure. But that's something we do all the time. But that's a mechanism, again, for whatever organization wants to contribute to this effort, they would be able to do that.
I just want to make sure that however we do it, that the organization is very nimble and can respond quickly, because most of these cases require that type of action. So I did want to ask you too, where did we come up with the $2,800 limit?
Looking at what would be between a 3-bedroom and a 4-bedroom fair market rent. So if the first month's rent and utility deposit, that's kind of like a 3-bedroom, 4-bedroom.
Could we, I don't feel that that's enough. There might be some instances we want to look, I don't know. I'm not comfortable with the number.
3,200, 3,500.
I was thinking 32, actually.
Okay, 3,200, okay.
Counselor Stewart?
So one of the, again, sorry for my back. One of the things I just wanted to confirm is that these proposed guidelines have been run by the Wake County folks who are already in connection with these students, and that makes sense? Like, we've made that direct line of contact with them and shared these proposed guidelines with them?
Yes, we met with Michelle Mazingo, who is in that role, and we kind of talked through these limits, and she was fine with them.
Okay, and then with the question to the maximum assistance per household, that's based on rent alone. Does that include, kind of to Mayor Baldwin's point about making sure that they're able to get all their utility connections and hooked up? Are we thinking about that in that $2,800 number or this new $3,200 one?
That was the first month's rent and security deposit, but bumping it up to 3,200 should easily cover the associated utility deposits.
Okay.
Great, thank you.
7 families. No, I just did the quick math at 3,200, roughly to 7 families if we were to max out. So that's why it's imperative that we find partners
We
on
have our
this
first
immediately.
partner, but we're waiting to announce it.
So that's all.
So, okay.
All right, thank you.
You need a motion?
I would appreciate
Yes.
one.
Okay.
I move for approval of the proposal for the Compassion Fund program implementation and guidelines,
Second.
And changing,
and changing it to 3,200 as the limit.
okay.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Thank you for your work on this.
Thank you.
Okay. Council Branch, did you have?
Yeah, I just want to be
an item?
clear. So right now, when we say everything on there, our planning commission report, and when we said we were going to move everything to April 7th, everything there is setting the public hearings.
Right.
So I was thinking if we just go ahead, because if we move it to April 7th, then we'll be setting public hearing for May. So for those items, go ahead, items 2 through 8, under the planning commission reports, set the public hearing for those for May the 8th. And the only reason I'm doing that is I'm just looking at the agenda, because unless I didn't hear in our motion that we were setting those hearings for that evening of the 7th, I thought we were setting it for us to discuss it on the 7th. So if I'm unclear, help me.
We're setting the meetings for the public hearings for the 7th.
There's ones that have already been set for today that we're moving to the 7th. As I understand, there's already ones on the 7th as well. Is that correct?
Right,
Yes.
there's 5 already on the 7th, and there were some were supposed to take place today
That
that
they'll
we're
go to-
moving to
they'll
the
go to the
7th.
7th.
And then this part were the ones we were supposed to schedule. Are we also automatically scheduling those 7 items for the evening of the 7th as well?
Yes, we are. That was the motion.
Okay. Okay,
But
I just want to make sure the clerk was clear and I wasn't
everybody,
clear.
I'm going to say this again.
Okay,
This is all fluid.
I understand.
This could all change tomorrow. Let's not get caught up in, like, everything is moving to the 7th. We don't even know how we're going to have a meeting on the 7th.
I understand.
So,
That's why I was
let's-
thinking,
Let's just.
Move it to the
yeah.
5th, but okay.
Okay, great. Thank you. The next the next item that we are considering is under the report and recommendation of the city manager. Item number 2, bus rapid transit.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This is an item associated with the ongoing work associated with bus rapid transit in the corridor. We do have a presentation here today to give you that particular update, or if you like, Amila with Transportation can give you an overview, and then you can move straight to action. It really just depends on your level of interest of receiving the presentation today.
Did everybody have an opportunity to review this presentation?
Yes.
Did everybody have an opportunity to review this? Okay. Are you comfortable moving forward?
Yes.
Okay.
Would you like, I can provide either a full presentation or I can focus on the abbreviated version?
May
we
I
can jump
suggest
to-
just an abbreviated couple of
Abbreviated
quick
version.
comments, Mila, maybe to highlights? That would be good.
So I will skip few slides, but I'll get to the point of the discussion today. The main point of the discussion includes 2 items. One is to update you on the 30% design for the New Bern Avenue BRT, and the second is the action item that we are bringing to the council. We received guidance at the February 11th meeting to consider consolidation of pedestrian project on New Bern Avenue along with BRT, and we have developed a resolution for the council to consider. So this slide shows 30% design and current segments. Segment 1 that starts in downtown and runs along the one-way pairs along the corridor has BRT proposed to run on the right side, right business and access transit. Then transition into segment 2. This is where BRT will be running in the median, and beyond Wake Med, BRT will be running in mixed traffic. And I'll show you some renderings and mock-ups that will give you a little bit of a better understanding of what that could look like. So you can, let me orient you. You can see the little key map on the right top, in the right top corner, and it has a blue directional arrow. It shows you where that screen shot, that photograph and that rendering would be along the corridor. So you can see on your left the photograph of existing conditions with existing bike lane, parking, general purpose lane. On the right, you can see a rendering of what it would look like with BRT being introduced into the downtown. And that would be the treatment all the way around downtown, going down Blunt, turn on Martin, up Wilmington, and out, heading towards Wake Med. So BRT will be running on the right, and general cars will be able to enter the facility to make turn into parking lot or parking garage or business. Moving on, you can see that arrow, the blue dot has moved, and now it's moving out of downtown towards Wake Med and towards New Hope. On the left, existing conditions, you can see currently 3 general purpose lanes, and you can see an existing bike lane. That bike lane right now is not separated, just painted bike lane along the roadway. On the right, the proposed treatment includes 12 feet wide multi-use path, so it will be used by bicycles and pedestrians. We will be utilizing appropriate design treatments to create safe facility. It will be separated physically by from the bus-only lane. You can see bus-only lane continues to run on the right side of the roadway, and then you have general purpose lanes and parking. Now we are transitioning to the segment that shows BRT running in the median. So again, that segment where that one-way pair ends, and it's between approximately Tarboro and Sunnybrook. So this is, the treatment is similar. You see 2 BRT lanes right in the middle of the roadway. Adjacent to BRT lanes, you have general purpose lanes for cars, and then you also can see 6 foot wide sidewalk on one side and new 12 feet wide multi-use path on the other side. That would be continuous multi-use path all the way from Blount Street in downtown to Sunnybrook at Wake Med. We were working on this design, and we've been sharing these designs and concepts with the public since June of 2019. We had 2 rounds of open houses. We also had CAC presentations, stakeholder meetings, pop-ups. One of the meetings with residents along Newbern prompted conversations to consider consolidation of pedestrian improvements along Newbern with BRT. There are numerous benefits that come with it. Obviously, there is less impact on the corridor as far as construction. We can maximize our scheduling and resources and opportunity to just complete construction as one project instead of splitting into 2. We can potentially consider tightening the design to have less impact on the corridor. And we did discuss it with property owners. There's also an opportunity to rescind the assessments that are associated with the pedestrian project, because BRT project would be taking care of those improvements anyways. At the February 11th meeting, we presented these options to the council. And we would the staff received direction to develop a resolution that would essentially consolidate these 2 projects, and this is what it would look like. You can see labels that show existing sidewalk conditions, and then you can see segments that are labeled construction. So those would be either BRT or consolidated pedestrian improvement, and that will provide continuous infrastructure without gaps from downtown all the way to Wake Med. So Today, the action is to request council to formally approve the resolution to combine Wake BRT, New Bern Avenue project and pedestrian improvement project and make necessary steps to consolidate the two.
I love this project. Thank you for all the work you've done, and I move to authorize the city manager to consolidate the Wake BRT, New Bern Avenue, and New Bern Avenue pedestrian improvement projects, authorizing budget transfers and amendments necessary to consolidate project appropriateness and rescind the property assessment.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Thank you for your
Thank
hard
you.
work on this. Okay, next is the R-Line circulator. Has everybody reviewed this information as well? I've been waiting for this for over 4 years, so I don't need to review it. I'm ready.
All right.
Everybody good?
Yeah.
If I could ask David, could you just put up the new route map? That would be my only suggestion, just so everybody maybe at home could see that.
Amazing.
Just focus on that.
It's linear.
It is linear. And I do have one slide that says basic assumptions associated with the route, which is a little bit important. So if you would give me 30, maybe 45 seconds most. If we look at the bullets here, though, we're getting away from the R-Line branded buses, and we're really trying to embrace our existing Go Raleigh brand. So we're actually shrinking the size of the buses on the route, as well as using CNG buses, but we will be using our existing brand as well. Another thing, we will certainly have stops that show or reflect this new service, but we're going to try to use our curb space wisely. So we're going to be sharing stops with our existing bus service. Curb space or curb space management is becoming something that it is tough, and so we want to make sure that we make good decisions. Again, if you see one bullet there, as we look towards electric vehicles, we also think that electric vehicles will have a good use within this corridor. So we look forward to their arrival next year, and hopefully you'll see those downtown as well. That's all I'm going to say about that, but I just wanted to bring up those few key points. Thank you.
I think it's great our transit authority
Somebody jump in.
approved this, and I move to approve the changes to the R-Line circulator as recommended by the transit authority.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
I do have one quick question. When we get the West Street extension, does that possibly change the ability to come through? We can talk offline.
We'll talk about it when we get the extension.
We're working on the extension. We just approved it. I'm very excited about the extension. We'll talk about it offline.
Put a pin on it.
Thank you. This was a long time coming. A lot of work went into the new design or routing system, I should say, and I just want to say thank you. Okay. We do not have public comment today, and no public hearings. They will be moved to a future date. I did want to ask about nominations. We have some folks who their Arts Commission is up. I just want to go through these real quick and decide how we want to do this. The first, clerk, do you have a microphone there that you can guide us through this?
She does.
Okay.
All right, the Arts Commission, you have one vacancy. The term of Patty Williams is expiring. She is eligible and would like to be considered.
Move for reappointment.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Commission, one vacancy. The term of Paul Neville is expiring, and he is not eligible for reappointment.
Could we leave him on there until we have
Yes.
opportunity to address some of these issues?
The code and your rules indicate a person continues to serve until replaced or reappointed. So
Okay.
all of these who are not eligible, if you don't take action, they just continue.
Okay.
And I'd like to point out, I did nominate someone, but we won't be able to get to that until our next
Yes.
meeting, so.
Mm-hmm.
I do have your nomination if you want to put him in or if you want to go.
I'm just saying this because we don't know when we're going to meet next, so I don't.
Let them continue.
Yeah, and it would be odd to try to put someone new on right now with all this uncertainty and not having meetings.
Canceled all meetings.
Yeah, so I just wanted to point out that I did nominate someone, but it'll
Okay.
hold.
Thank you.
Okay, the Board of Adjustment, the term of Michael Rainey, your alternate member is expiring, and he is eligible for reappointment and would like to be considered.
Move for approval.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Raleigh Convention and Performing Arts Center, the term of Stan Williams is expiring. He is eligible and would like to be considered.
Move for approval.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Environmental Advisory Board, you have 2 vacancies. The terms of Anna Gordon and Linda Watson are expiring. Ms. Gordon is not eligible for reappointment due to length of service. Should be Ms. Watson does not wish to be considered for reappointment.
Okay, we'll
Again-
leave them
Again,
for now.
the Human Relations Commission, you have 3 vacancies. 3 terms are expiring, and all have served 6 years, therefore not eligible for reappointment. So they would continue unless you have
We'll
other
continue
direction.
until we, yes.
Substance Use Advisory Commission, 1 vacancy. The term of Susan Foster is expiring. She is eligible, and I heard from her she does wish to be considered.
Move for approval.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
You did really
Post-
well.
Thank you. Do we have, well, we have already heard from the city attorney. Do you have anything additional right now?
I do not.
Okay.
If anybody has any questions, I'll answer them, but I'm good for now.
Okay, report and recommendation of the city clerk.
Move for approval of minutes and work session.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, thank you. All right. Thank you, everybody, for bearing with us. Counselor Stewart?
I'm understanding that there might be some confusion about our motion around boards and commissions and canceling all those meetings, and just making sure that our motion matched our intention around which are meeting and which are going to be looking into for virtual meetings. I just want to make sure that we have
The
what we need.
motion was moving toward virtual. We're canceling all through April 15th.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to move toward the virtual with preference to the bond committees that are working, Planning Commission, Board of Adjustment, and RHDC. So that's the point of preference with the virtual.
Yeah, and that also includes our committee meetings as well.
Yes.
And your main meetings. We'll work on that. There's been some talk about trying to get some guidelines across the board on this. It's sort of an open question, and we'll get something together and get back to you.
Well, and I believe that the governor's office is also looking at how they can assist. So,
Thank you.
okay, thank you. All right, now we are going to enter into closed session. Motion is in order. GS 143-318-11A3 to consult with the city attorney to preserve the attorney-client privilege and to give instructions concerning the handling or settlement of a potential claim. GS 143-318-11A5 to establish or instruct the city staff or negotiating agents concerning the position be taken by or on behalf of the city in negotiating the terms of a contract for the acquisition of real property by purchase, option, exchange, or lease. So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, we are moving to room 305, is that correct?
Stairwell right here.
Okay.
Council gave direction to the city attorney on the matter mentioned for closed session. We now stand adjourned.